Okay. So, well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending where you are. Here we are in a closing session of the sixth French Lusophone Dialogues, and this is a table that is promoted by the Global Planning Education Association Network, GPEAN. GPEAN is an association created in 2003, and it was a result of the World Planning School Congress, the first one that happened in Shanghai in 2001. And at that time, many associations from different parts of the world related with urban and regional planning, they signed a statement saying that they would have a cooperation with each other in order to promote the global education, urban and regional planning education in a global scale. So this is a table that is commemorating this 20th anniversary of the Statement of Shanghai. And for this, we will have some colleagues that some of them were present at the Shanghai Statement signature in 2001. Other ones weren't, but they were related also with the creation of the GPEAN because they were in the very beginning of it. So unfortunately, we were having the first panelist would be Professor Alan Mabin from Witwatersrand University of South Africa, but he had a problem and he sent us an email that I will read it. Very nice email. Dear colleagues, I trust all are in good health. Here I am afraid it's bad news. I'm traveling presently in the Eastern Cape province of South Africa, mostly in small towns and rural places. Even in this ill-resourced part of the country, one usually finds good Wi-Fi, and I was planning to use that for tomorrow's event, though not guaranteed. But another problem intervenes. The country, as some you will know, has a major electricity supply problem nationally, the system being dominated by the single national state-owned company named Eskom. It has for 14 years adopted a policy and practice of what is very called load shedding to deal with the shortfall between supply and demand. The result is power cuts, usually scheduled for several hours at a time in a rotating fashion. So he is going to be in this area, so the result will be no communication for those hours, with a vague possibility that connection via cell phone might be possible for some, but I will be there in usually a Wi-Fi connection, when which I had assumed it would be able to join that will shut down. So with regret, I not be able to join, but he has here said, in my case, my role in relation to the Shanghai event and statement and the development of GPEAN began in the 90s, and in 1996, I happened to be at the joint ACSP-ASOP conference in Toronto, at which the idea of the Shanghai Tongji First World Planning School Congress developed. I reported back to colleagues in the Africa after being asked as a hair participant from Africa at that time. And the early stages of the development of the AAPS, the Association of African Planning Schools, took place in just those next few years. Driven very much by the late close friend and colleague Vanessa Watson, AAPS began indeed to take shape. But Vanessa couldn't attend the Shanghai meeting in 2001 and requested me, pending the delayed arrival of Professor Enkie in China from Tanzania, to participate in the discussions. I did so, and that's why I appear in some of the pictures. But at the time of the agreement on the declaration, it was indeed Professor Enkie, as an officer of the emerging AEPS, who participated. Support from the global network assisted the further development of AAPS, and by 2006, when the second WPSC took place in Mexico City, the organization had gained far more strength, not to mention formal membership on the part of the numerous planning schools around the enormous continent of Africa. The committing to drawing together the efforts of a global community represented in the Shanghai Statement that I had the privilege of helping to develop 20 years ago undoubtedly made the path easier. Today, AAPS is a substantial presence in thinking about planning and shaping the future of planning in Africa, whatever the setbacks which inevitably occurs. AAPS proceeds from strength to strength, as will be demonstrated, we believe, at the upcoming conference in 10 days from now, hosted by the RD University in Tanzania and supported by a member of ASOP in the shape of the School of TU Dortmund. Hundreds of colleagues will participate, albeit virtually rather than in Dar es Salaam. These are complex and uncertain times, and AAPS provides a way of linking the efforts to grapple with the situation across the continent in collaboration with colleagues around the world. The Shanghai Statement and the emergence of GPEAN have played a highly significant role in these developments, and I'm sure will continue to do so. I apologize to having to drop off at this stage. And I wish all participants in the session tomorrow the very best wish, all the organizations represented, as well as the planning schools involved, creative and effective future as the world and our cities and towns and indeed rural areas move into the next stage of addressing our difficulty challenges. Yours sincerely, Professor Alan Mabin, Emeritus Professor, School of Architecture and Planning, University of Witwatersrand, Johannesburg. Sorry for my for saying that. It's difficult. It's a difficult word for us to pronounce. So, unfortunately, Professor Alan wasn't able to come, and this was the very sympathetic email he sent us. I read it in order for us to think what he was thinking about our panel. So let's move on. I will invite Professor Bruce Stifto. He is Professor Emeritus of City and Regional Planning at Georgia Institute of Technology in the USA. He was president of the Association of College Schools of Planning from the USA also during the 2001 World Planning School Congress. Co-governor with Im Chang-Hu, president of the Asian Planning Schools Association, of the meeting of planning school executives during that Congress, and founding chair of the Global Planning Education Association Network. So please, Bruce, if you want to show your thoughts about this 20th anniversary of GPEAN, Shanghai Statement, we will be very pleased to listen to you.
Thank you so much, Eduardo. Bom dia, good day. Let me take a moment to show my screen in this unfamiliar software. It will take me a moment. And I will be right with you. So I think we're almost there. And maybe now you see my slides, yes?
Yeah, we are seeing in the full screen.
So this first World Planning Schools Congress in Shanghai at Tongji University in July of 2001 was a remarkable event. I can't describe the excitement that I felt and that others felt coming to the Tongji campus and looking forward to meeting planning educators from all over the world for the first time. The sense of welcome at Tongji was just remarkable. This Congress built on a series of bilateral congresses between ACSP and ASOP that began in Oxford in 1991 and then in Toronto in 1996. And in Toronto in 1996, the idea was hatched to expand the bilateral relationship to include ANZOPs from Australia and New Zealand and APSA from Asia. And we moved to the idea, or others I should say, moved to the idea of having this World Congress. And there was a competition, and Tongji was successful in winning that competition. These meetings were remarkable. Many of us met colleagues who worked on the same issues we did in ways that were foreign to us, and with examples that we didn't know about. And we expanded our horizons remarkably. And the hosts at Tongji did an incredible job of elevating the profile of the four organizations and making us all realize that we were part of a global project. Here on the stage, you see the presidents of the four host organizations in the flag ceremony at the closing assembly of the Congress. And the four organizations really were given center stage and made to feel that they, along with Tongji, were the hosts of this World Congress. Here is the steering committee that organized the meeting. From left to right, that's Michael Hibbard from ACSP, Louis Albrecht from ASAP, Wuji Ching, the local host organizer from Tongji, Tony Ye from APSA, and Steve Hamnet from ANZAPS. And this was, I think, a 3-year project for them to put this together. None more than Wuji Ching, who you will hear from, who marshaled the group at Tongji to make this remarkable event happen. Kyung-Ho Yim, the president of APSA, and I, when we started thinking about the opportunity created by bringing the world's planning scholars together in one place, we thought, you know, there are more than 4 associations, and we have had no way to communicate amongst ourselves as planning school associations across the world. And so Kyung-Ho and I invited the leadership of every planning school association we could find or others could lead us to. And we had 2 days of meetings during the Shanghai Congress in this room that you see on the Tongji campus. And this meeting of so-called planning school association executives was remarkable. We spent the first day getting to know each other and each other's associations. We talked about the membership in our associations, what our associations did, what our products were, if we had a congress, if we had a journal. And these associations were very different from one another. Some had been operating for decades. Some had offices and staff. Some were entirely voluntary organizations that depended entirely on the voluntary labor of faculty at schools. But we all discovered that we shared a common set of values about the importance of planning scholarship and planning education. And we all agreed that increasing the international flow of conversation amongst our educators would be a good thing. And so the second day of this meeting, we spent discussing what we could be doing together as associations and what kind of form that might take. And as I said, we are very different associations with very different finances, very different labor profiles, very different resources, and very different cultures. But we were able to agree on what was on that whiteboard. I think it comes up on the next slide. There we are, and there's Wuji Ching and I standing at the handwritten agreement, insertions and all of the Shanghai Statement that would be agreed to by all of the associations. And here's the wording of that statement. I apologize, I can't read the Mandarin, but in English, representatives of national and international planning education associations gathered at Tongji University in Shanghai and agreed on the goal of increasing mutual communication in order to improve the quality and visibility of planning and planning education. To achieve this, it was agreed to establish a global planning education association network and committees to plan holding the second World Planning Schools Congress and to develop an inclusive communication network. We didn't realize that day we were naming the network, but the style we created in this statement, a Global Planning Education Association network, became the way the network was known, of course. And here's the group of Planning School Association executives, as we said, after the agreement upon the Shanghai Statement text. And Wu Jiqing was insistent that that we sign this statement on the stage at the closing assembly of the first WPSC, and that is what we did. I'm afraid the Aparo representative was not able to make the signing ceremony, but there are the other 8 presidents or their representatives signing the statement on stage. Kyung-Hoo Kim from APSA, Geraldo Costa from UNPUR, Tom Harper from ACOP, Hans Mastap from ASAP. I'm next on the left, and Tomsafun Yinkia from the African Association of Planning Schools, Susan Thompson from ANZAPS, and the late Roberto Rodriguez from ALIUP in Latin America. I have to say it was a thrilling moment. There are the signatures that we made that day, and I think we have a picture of the 8 of us on the stage together. And then that gave birth to this association, which since has expanded to 11 members, including the Turkish Association and the Indonesian Association, a network that has produced now 5 World Planning Schools Congresses and a 6th one to take place in Bali next year, 6 volumes of the Dialogues in Urban and Regional Planning Best Papers book series, a 7th one to appear this next year, partnerships with UN Habitat, including the development of the 2009 Global Report on Human Settlements, a partnership with ISACARP that is quite new, and who knows how many new ideas and projects and cooperations that we will undertake in the years to come, or that the network will undertake in the years to come. This is really a remarkable project with incredible potential, and it's so satisfying to think back that we're now 20 years since we signed this statement. Let me stop there, and I will figure out how to stop sharing my screen and turn over to Thomas.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. We will move on to the next panelist, and then we will have, I think the next one would be Klaus, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, let me see here in my, Professor Klaus Klunsmann is Professor Emeritus of the School of Planning of the Technische Universität Dortmund, Honorary Professor of the Bartlett School of Planning and University College of London, and visiting professor in many universities in Europe and America. He holds an honorary PhD from the University of Newcastle upon Tyne, and he held a personal Jean Monnet Professorship in Spatial Planning in Europe from 1993 to 2006. He's an elected member of the German Academy of Spatial Planning and the Royal Town Planning Institute, and he was one of the founders of ASOP, the Association of European Schools of Planning, in 1987. Unfortunately, Professor Klaus is I think in Doha, if I'm not wrong, and he has also having problems with the internet. So he asked me to share his presentation with you. So that's what I'm going to do now. Unfortunately, this is some problem we still have, even with such easiness of the internet. Sometimes it's difficult because not all the places of the world are well covered with internet, and sometimes we have problems. So can you see my screen? I think yes. Yeah, I can see it. So 20 years after the Shanghai Statement, what has changed. So this is a presentation for this round table. And he made seven observations. So first of one, the number of scientists, increasingly women, teaching and researcher in institutes of higher education and working in public administration, think tanks, consultancies, and in a daily growing urban world has increased considerably. This reflects the exploding attention which liveliness in cities has received in traditional and social media and among citizens who are more and more participating in planning and decision making processes in times of climate change and COVID 19. Oh, sorry. The second observation is this interest has encouraged many institutes of higher education to offer Bachelor of Arts, Master of Arts, and PhD programs in urban planning and urban affairs, and to initiate congresses, summer schools, workshops, and labs dealing with urban and rural development. The traditional fields of planning, architecture, engineering, and geography have lost their dominance. However, only very few universities have established independent planning education during the last 2 decades, such as the School of Planning in Dortmund, Germany, more than 50 years ago. 3. With the widening of the field of urban and regional to the social and cultural dimensions, to participation, governance, and data mining and modeling, planning and planning education changed the original architectural, technical, and legal profile of courses and programs. To my concern, despite the fundamental importance of the economic and financial context of urban development, the economic dimension in planning education is more and more neglected. 4. Reacting to ranking practice of university presidents and the power of Anglophone publishers, the gap between theory and practice in planning is widening. For many planning educators, publishing is referred journals has become crucial and more important than actively involving in planning for local and regional governments. Only few bridge builders between theory and practice are narrowing the gap. 5. Snowballization and populism are closing windows of national planning cultures to the outside world. I think it's a slowballization, not slowballization, sorry. COVID-19, national lockdowns and travel restrictions are reducing opportunities to cross boundaries of national planning cultures. This will have impacts for students and researchers on cross-border learning. Improved translation software will facilitate the use of national languages and it will contribute to gradual demise of the Anglophone dominance of planning literature. Sixth, digitalization accelerated by the global pandemic and new communication modes are changing planning education. Hybrid forms of teaching will dominate the discipline. Real case projects and labs will gain again even more importance in planning education. This, in turn, requires more, not less, teaching manpower. 7. With government-favored urbanization policies, planning and planning education has considerably emerged in China as an important field, though in a politically difficult context is still dominated by urban design and taught mainly by architects. So here he sent some pictures of AESOP Foundation in 1987, and so AESOP is completing 25 years. This is in Kappenberg, Dortmund, Germany, and as I said, he was one of the founders. He apologized very much, but we had problems really with him trying to enter in the on this platform. So I think this is his words. I tried to be as much as I could try to say not only reading it with some sort of feeling, but anyway, we can also discuss. I think he made some 7 points very interesting that we can discuss at the end. The next one I think is Professor Sérgio Flores. Sérgio Flores is an architect and professor of the Faculty of Architecture of the National Autonomous University of Mexico. He holds a master in landscape architecture and another in urban regional planning, both from the University of California at Berkeley, and obtained a specialty in housing and division of higher studies. He has been a member of the postgraduate program in urbanism of his faculty and a consultant on urban development, planning, and design for several entities, including the World Bank, having worked in Mexico, the USA, Guatemala, Honduras, and Venezuela. He was former president of ALEUP, that's the Latin America Association of Schools of Planning. So be welcome, Professor Sérgio Flores, and we are all ears for you.
Okay, so I'll start with a brief situation of what ALEUP is about. From its beginning at the beginning of this century, and by the late Roberto Rodriguez, whom passed away 4 years ago, I believe. Now, he was the starter of he was a participant in the Shanghai Statement, and what we have being one of the latest associations that was formed, I believe we had a very strong presence for a while, because we were involved in the celebration of the Second World Planning School Congress, which many of you maybe attended, or most of the members of the panel, I believe. So from then on, we had this very intense season, let's say, in preparing the Congress and all the work that involved, and a very intense contact with our colleagues from the associations. But after the Congress was celebrated, there was this impasse, let's say, or this decreasing level of activity, because the next member of the association, which was formed basically by schools from Venezuela, the University of Simón Bolívar, Argentina, and the University of General Sarmiento, and schools from Mexico. So we were the majority of the members. So we had at that time around 7 or 8 schools. Now we have 11 schools, because the common ground for this association was it was formed by basically with schools that had bachelor's degree in planning, let's say pre-graduated, pregrado, let's say. And that still is a very strong part. So Mexico had that times 7 or 8 schools. So we were the in that sense the heart of the association. From then on, we have grown to 11 schools now, part of the association, and we have invited in Mexico, and we have invited also graduate programs, although still they're minority. Now the current status of the association is that we have integrated more schools of Argentina, which is especially the University of Buenos Aires, UBA, from Chile, Pontificia School, from Brazil, the ABC University, and also we had participation from schools from Peru, and from, I believe, I don't remember if Uruguay, in the last Congress that we held in Santiago de Chile. So we already have we became, after many years of trying to involve other countries, other schools, I must say, we have already built a much stronger association, due in many ways to the work of Juan Ángel de Merutis, which is now listening to us, in the last 4 years. So we are now a much better and more diverse association, with a woman president, which is Magdalena Vicuña, which I think she's also listening, and hope to have a much better performance for the next year. We have been improving steadily, and we have very good perspectives, let's say. We are planning to hold a Congress in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, in the next year, I believe. So you are invited to it. And following with the some of the issues that Professor Kunzman mentioned, I would say that this last year haven't been, this last decade at least, or more, haven't been very welcoming years for the planning profession, since the, let's say, the neoliberal ideology in many ways thinks that the best planning that exists is no planning at all. Well, so it hasn't been that much of welcoming atmosphere. However, we in Mexico and in some other countries, we are growing in degrees, mostly in the at the bachelor level, and I would say that has forced us to encourage the issues of practice, the issues of how planning is done and how to get it done for benefit of students who basically they will try to find a job in the profession. So I think there's also this, I would say there's a gap in theory and practice, and also that there's a gap, and I will take on what the late Vanessa Watson used to say, there's a gap between theory and practice in between countries. I mean, it's very different to talk about planning in our context than in the context of Europe, United States, and Canada. I think there are institutional and ways of governing, let's say, that make deep differences. And finally, I would say that there's also that we have some kind of parallel situation, still, let's say, fighting for the recognition, strong recognition from the official, the official, let's say, establishment of the planning profession, in the sense that still is very much associated with some physical issues and highly influenced by some group of architects, let's say, still have very strong presence in the field of urban projects, let's say, or urban planning. The other thing is that COVID-19 has indeed has had many consequences, but somehow in our hybrid, let's say, resolution of the courses, we had found that has encouraged and strength the self how do I say, the self management of the students. They develop more skills to more autonomy of us as professors to in the formulation of of studies and projects and so on. I mean, they somewhat, we have seen that the autonomy of the students was greatly improved in that sense, and now they associate better and even give way to we could say more profound reflections about problems they approach. That's what I'm saying this in my intervention. Thank you. Yes.
The summarizing of the discussion. The next panelist is Professor Heloísa Soares Moura Costa. Sorry. She's an architect and urbanist from the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, Master in Urban Planning from the Architectural Association, PhD in Demography from the Federal University of Minas Gerais, and postdoctorate at the Department of Geography at the University of California at Berkeley. She's currently full professor at the Department of Geography of the Federal University of Minas Gerais. She was coordinator of the Population Environment Working Group and president of the Brazilian National Association of Graduate Studies and Research in Urban and Regional Planning. That's the ANPUR. And I think she was the one that, when the GPEAN was formed in 2003, she was the one that signed it for the ANPUR. So welcome, Heloísa. Please, can we have your presentation? Yeah.
Okay, so I will copy Eduardo. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are. I like it that. And thank you very much. I think it's an honor to represent ANPUR at this round table and to share some, let's say, memories and also perhaps some considerations for the future. I was not present at Shanghai, but I have participated in the discussions in Brazil leading to the Shanghai Congress and the creation of the network. This was before 2001, in the term of presidency of ANPUR, occupied by Flora Gonçalves, and our sort of international articulation person was Carlos Weiner, who was very present at that time. As Bruce has mentioned, Geraldo Costa was the ANPUR director at the time and was the one who represented ANPUR in Shanghai, as the pictures and the documents show. There was, I think, a previous idea of forming an international association of planning schools, but the actual configuration of a network of planning schools and education and planning education prevailed, and I think that was very wise and very interesting. I don't know if all of you know, but I think there are three types of planning education associations in this network. The ones that represent continents, like the European, the African, the Asian, Latin American. There are the associations that represent planning schools and associations from specific countries like the North American, United States and Canadian, and like Campo in Brazil, who has now a little more than 70 institutions that are represented in AMPU, and AMPU exists since the 1980s. I can't remember exactly the date, but quite a long time. And thirdly, there are those associations motivated by language and culture, like the APERO, who is co-hosting this event. Also, I thought that I would remember and tell you some of the early debates that I can remember of, and then I would like to talk about also some of the products that were delivered by the GPEAN, including the dialogues in urban and regional planning, which I will show you in a moment. The creation of the GPEAN itself and its committee. We have two committees, the coordinating committee.
Acho que a professora Heloísa caiu. Eu vou tentar falar com ela aqui. Vamos ver se ela volta. Acho que eu não sei se ela percebeu que ela caiu. Sorry, I'm speaking Portuguese. I think Professor Heloísa has gone out of. So I'm trying to see if she managed to come in again. Yeah. Trying to talk to her, but this is a problem with.
Yes.
She came back. Okay.
Something happened and I disappeared from my screen.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. I was talking about the first years, and as Eduardo mentioned, we had I don't know how to say it. Every time we have an association conference, we used to have a round table as we are having here, and that was very good to improve the initial years. So in 2003, in the AMPU meeting here in Belo Horizonte, where I live, was the one that when we signed the charter, the GPEAN charter, which I was very pleased to sign, and that was the conference when I became AMPU president. And also, we have the international, the WPSC, the World Planning Schools Conference, that are held every 4 or 6 years. We had the first one, then we had 3 wonderful conferences, in Mexico City, in Perth, in Australia, and in Rio de Janeiro. And now, next year, we hope we will have one in Bali. When I was trying to collect notes to make this statement here, I remembered one of our first major discussions, which started with the idea of international accreditation of planners. I'm sure Bruce will recall it. It was a very lively discussion, and we had a very interesting roundtable in Portland in an ACSP meeting where very intense debates occurred and different views appeared. And more than different views, I think this was the recognition of the differences between us as associations and how to form a professional, how to produce or to provide planning education with a critical view of society, the creation of knowledge and the role of the university and professional institutions, and its relation to society, who is in the end the subjects of planning. It highlighted our differences and the importance of learning from the experience of other countries and associations. And it highlighted differences between the Anglo-Saxon tradition and other traditions, and also between the South and North perspectives on planning and the role of that profession. For instance, here in Brazil, we don't have an undergraduate course, have few undergraduate courses in planning. We have some, but we don't need to be accredited as a professional to exercise planning. So it's different from other countries. And I think that the idea of dialogues, of interchange, presupposes difference and exchange of views. And I think this is a constant and permanent learning process that we started, and I think that's how we can move forward to the future. And thinking about that, what I'd like to contribute in this discussion is to present one of the series of publications of the association, which is the Dialogues in Urban and Regional Planning, which is this book here. And this is the first issue. It had, and the participation and the publishing of these books. I think this was a very interesting and learning process. I showed you the first one. I'll show you the last one that was issued. I learned from the web page that we have also the number 7, which is going to be launched now in November. And the 5 first ones were mainly assembled based on best papers selected by the different associations, and they were subject to an international editorial board, and then they were published. This was a very interesting learning process. I had the privilege of editing 2 of those books, I think number 3 and number 4. And from number 6 onwards, they became thematic. This number 6, which is one so far, the theme was the right to the city. And I learned that number 7 would be transformative planning, which is a very interesting idea. And thinking about this, I think that the continuation of this publication is a path, an avenue that we should pursue. And having had the experience of working a little bit on this, I have, I think, 2 comments that I'd like to use this opportunity to put forward so that we can discuss. The first one is that although we are in each time more globalized world, language is still a problem. Not only the language itself, because we can easily translate texts, papers, words, etc., but the idea of writing intelligibly in another language is different from just translating it. And I think from my experience editing 2 of the volumes of dialogues, that those who were not English-speaking people were in a sort of disadvantage way in this editorial process. Even bibliographical reference and this sort of things. The second point that I think that we could think about, and I think that would be very interesting, is to discuss how to make these publications freely accessible. I know there are copyrights and costs, everything, but if we have universal access to the website or whatever, this material would be much more easily accessible all over the world, and the ideas could interchange more easily and flow with more discussion. And I think that's it. That's what I tried to prepare to say. And I thank you the invitation once more, and I hope we can have some time for discussion and put these words in future discussions in other congresses and other opportunities. Thank you.
Or we can call Professor Wu Ziqiang. He's a professor of urban planning and design at Tongji University, from which he is former vice president. He holds a PhD in engineering from Technical University of Berlin, and he's counselor for Shanghai Municipal Government, and also a member of the Chinese Academy of Engineering. Professor Wu was the Secretary General of the first World Planning School Congress that happened in Shanghai. For that, we most appreciate and thank you for that, Professor. That was the beginning of everything, so we would like to have your words about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eduardo. It's a great honor for me again come back to GPEAN. And I would like, first of all, thank you so much. I'm so delighted to come back to GPEAN Society. And I would like also thank you very much to the founders, not only me, and I would like here see that time the Secretary General of Asia Association, Anthony Ye, is he helps me a lot for the funding of this, and also a lot of details proposal for the organize this World Congress. And also certainly I would like also thank, I cannot forget the help from the SSP, from the associations like the ESOP. Yeah, they gave me also a lot of the proposals for the every detail. Actually, I still remember. So what I like to say, the contribution from the world, from Asia, from the Latin America, from the North America, and also for the Europe, and from the Africa. It's a great unification of the planning education in the world. And certainly we also, after 20 years, we have to think again what's the really happens and after this great event. And I would like to show you my PowerPoint documents. I have see here the like the window here I show you, and can you see it? Yeah. And this is actually the most important, the PowerPoint, the documents. That's the Shanghai Statement in the 14th July 2001. Just Bruce has read it. I'm also so delighted. Also, the right side is the program. Actually, that times the tracks totally also with the chairs. We have organized totally 16 different tracks, and also here the data and also the moment we have just signed the Shanghai Statement, have the picture, and also the picture have showed here signed the documents, Shanghai Statement.
Professor Zhu, can you give a zoom for us, please? It's if you put the zoom a little bit more, then we can. It's a little bit small. The zoom in the presentation.
Yeah. It's okay now.
No, yeah, the zoom. Yeah, you have there the zoom. Yeah, this. Yeah. Now we can see it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. Okay. Good. And certainly the.
Yeah, you have there the zoom.
Is this now okay now?
Yeah, we're seeing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's the time. Yeah. Okay. Very important. And certainly after 20 years, I really think about we should think again, not only see the contribution of the Congress, that the most contribution of this Congress, I think the first one is we united. We can have the network to exchange the experience and the new ideas, also the new innovation from the different parts of the world. And the second is, and we have also exchanging a lot of the students between the schools. Like today, the yellow color the T-shirt students now is the professors already in Tongji University, and after the Congress, they go to different countries, different schools, and after 20 years, they are shifted already. The young professor, also the dean of the schools, even a lot. And so it's very important for the young generation, according to this network. I think it's also second, very important contribution. The third one is actually through this the network, we know a lot of people from the different parts. We see not only the difficulty in education in China, also also the same difficulty in the Latin America, like in Ampu, and also just like Louisa mentioned, the difficulty of the non-English speak in the teachers, professors. How can we exchange by ourselves? So I think that we know also the difficulty not only for us, for Chinese, for the Asia people to participate the international the exchange. Also, the another parts of the people have this problem. So know the same problem. So that's also very important. Today, as we in the last for the 20 years, I call again the people come back to think again. From the 2001, today is 2021, and how can imagine the year 2041, another 20 years, after 20 years, what will happen for the planning education? So we have a symposium together a seminar. I use the internet also with the connection with the different parts of the world, and certainly the people have participated the Congress in China. They gathering together again in Tongji University, and it's very important. Actually, the Professor Kusma said that the 7 points. I really appreciate these 7 points, but I think today we think again. One side, we should know the knowledge to the resilience for this climate change. But this is the much more needed, asked is the praxis in different parts of the world, in different the praxis in the different continent is much more important to exchange the praxis and also the real. How can we do something in planning education? Not only theoretical, and also we can the praxis. How can intervention for this the new the challenge, that the challenge what we 20 years not discussed. Second, I think it's really very important is the way how can we overcome this difficult of the language between the people, between the students, between the professors. How can we overcome it? So I think a lot about how can overcome the difficulty of the people, actually through this digital form, especially through this AI translation, and not only the words, also the sound. I think today is the developed so fast. So in this point of view, I think in the 20 years, we can do much more. So that's the way actually we in the last 20 years, and we think again. And so I think the last point is important. Not only 5 years, a big event. It's the daily change, daily change of the students, daily change of the praxis in different parts of the world, and how can let the students from beginning to participate this global education, world education, planning education. So I organize much more now the student participate the so-called praxis project for the eco community, for resilience community, for smart community. This small project in the website. So this website do a lot of student education between the daily education. So last year I have organized the organization of this World Urban Planning Education Network with the students. The one competition of the real praxis, over 1,000 students groups from the world participated in our project. So I am very happy to present you the last slides, the open for the students, for the school to school, for the daily education, for the daily praxis. So I offer a lot of projects for the students to. So I call also you to let students working together. The network is now the intelligent city under the UNESCO and also the China Academy of Engineering. So we support the student to do much more for the daily education. And so I would like to say today, after 20 years, we come back to the think again for the next 20 years. Important is to let the young people daily education, let the young people from beginning to know the challenge is global, but the practice we can do by ourselves in our location. So it's the location acting and exchanging the knowledge global for the new challenge like the COVID-19, like the climate change, and like the a lot of governance problem in the world. So we needed more detail, more small piece, more young people. So that's I think for the next 20 years. So I would like also more contribution for the Global Education Association Network, GPEAN, and for the coming 2 decades. I think that's much more important. So for the last words, I would like to thank again for the older people that times have helped fund this the GPM and also the First World Congress. Bruce here, Anthony here, also Kusman's here, also the Luisa is here. So I thank you so much. Also a lot of the colleagues today are not here in the conference, but I again thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Wu. Well, I'll try to make a very brief remarks here. I think all the presentations were very good and were very provocative, yet not provocative. And I think some points are really standing, yes. Well, one of the points I think Professor Sergio Flores said is how planning will continue to be as a field of knowledge, considering neoliberalism. That's some countries that are working with the idea of not plan at all because of neoliberal ideas. So I think this is a challenge that our associations may think and may prepare something for the future as well, as Professor Wu said, for the next 20 years. I think that the problem of the environment is quite a sensitive one, and I think most of you have also talked about it. And I think this is a question that probably the future of urban and regional planning education will have to have even more concerns that has already. Yeah, and I think the COVID was a proof of that. I liked very much this discussion about the practice and theory, and I think many of you have addressed this point because sometimes we are so much engaged in this sort of publish or perish problem that all of us face as professors and as academics, most of all, and sometimes the practice, the theory comes a little bit apart from the practice. And I think most of you addressed also the importance with the workshops that Professor Wu showed and some thoughts of Eloisa as well. I think theory has to be related, much more related with practice. And I think this problem of productivism and that comes to the problem of publication. Yeah. Well, first of all, I think, as Eloisa said, Dialogues is a publication of ours, of GP, and it tries to make this sort of collect from all over the world, from all the associations, different regions of planning. But we know that not all of the publications have this, let's say, broad view and so inclusive, let's say. And I think the publication and the problem of open sources, as Eloisa said, is really very difficult to deal with because all of these being apart more and more from the practice and more related with theory, it's somehow related with this problem of publishing, and we have to publish. And as someone said, most of the journals are in English. So in all of this preoccupation, sometimes puts you apart from the practice and how to enhance it. And let's see what else. Well, the problem of the globalization, I think somehow there is this problem of the language, as some of us and Professor Wu has mentioned, and also Eloisa. And I think very much, I think this idea of bringing more the students for this discussion, it's quite important, not only on the World Planning School Congress, because generally before them we have the PhD workshop. That is an opportunity for students to exchange ideas and learn from different advisors, different tutors from different countries. But I think maybe this idea of having more and more international studios in between our universities, in between the universities of our associations, I think this could be very interesting in order to establish really an international network of research on urban regional planning, because as we know, the problems of each place is very different from another. So there isn't one urban planning that will deal with all the problems. And I think this idea of bringing the students together, maybe stimulating our schools to have this sort of international workshops, I think it's a good idea that maybe we could also bring to GPEAN. And finally, I think this thing that also Professor Wu said about the local and the global, yeah, that's quite related with the things I said before. Well, I think these are the main points. We still have 18 minutes to go, so I will open for you that if you want to have a last 5 minutes of final remarks. So we start with Bruce, and then we follow the sequence we had. So Bruce, your final remarks, please.
Well, it's been delightful to listen to all our colleagues and the different perspectives. I want to say I think that these 20 years have seen remarkable changes in globalization and planning education. You know, where we were in 2001 was that we hardly knew what each other were doing. And there's still plenty of barriers and gaps, but we know a whole lot more about each other's work than we did in 2001. There, we have the World Planning Schools Congress series, but we also have other other international congresses in planning and in the individual disciplines that many of us work in. We have much more international communication in our journals. Editorial boards are much more international than they were 20 years ago. Some of our journals are now multilingual or bilingual. Abstracts are with some frequency published in multiple languages, and we have these internet tools that translate for us. And the translations are not always great, but they point out to us where other work is that is valuable and useful for us. And then I think that we have many more partnerships, school to school, association to association, firm to firm. We have many firms that are working globally or at least cross-regionally. We can criticize some of that work as being sort of culturally insensitive or poorly informed, but a lot of it is well done. And it is helping to bring ideas from one region to another. And each of us in the countries we practice in, many of the best ideas that we're practicing with are things that started elsewhere. And you know, 20 years ago, we would have said that the communication channels in planning scholarship and in planning practice flow overwhelmingly from north to south. And today, it's a different landscape. Many good ideas are flowing from south to north. many good ideas are flowing from south to south. Some of the most productive partnerships in the world are south-south partnerships. And there's better conversation north to north than there used to be. I think it's a different landscape. I think GPEAN has been an important part of that set of changes, but we are far from the only part of those changes. The technological differences are immense. The incentives in universities to work cross-nationally are much greater than they were. This is a different world, and it's really a better world because we're talking to one another. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Bruce. Thank you for your final thoughts. So, Sergio, please, if you can say your final thoughts.
Well, we said that, and especially in the Latin American context, there are, despite the political ideologies and regimes, let's say, that we have been through the last 30 years, the planning profession is alive and well. We are growing in number of schools, much more school in all the continent, subcontinent, and spreading in, let's say, reach in topics, and also institutionally, let's say, we're more present than ever. But we also, I think we have to insist on the issue that I mentioned, and Eloisa also mentioned, that there is this the gaps between theory and practice, which is common to everybody but different, let's say, also address this issue of difference, and between North and South. I mean, same things mean very different things in different circumstances, and I think we have to deal with that in order not to accept as in a non-question way or non-critical way some of the, let's say, some of the multilateral truths that sometimes are let's say even agreed between countries in certain international forums or agreements, whatever. So we have to go beyond the certain issues that are established and then push through countries' legislation as irrefutable truths, let's say. Some topics of the new urban agenda, which doesn't make sense, etc. Things like that. Thank you. And I'm very pleased to be here and to see faces of good old friends. Thank you.
Okay, Sergio, thank you very much. Luisa, please, your final thoughts.
Well, a lot has already been said, but I think that we could make some experiments, perhaps in Bali, or we could benefit from Eduardo being the steering committee so that he could take these thoughts on. I think the idea of involving the students somehow, I don't know exactly how, it's a great thing to do. We have experienced some of these sort of workshops, PhD students' workshops in some AMPUR meetings, and they were very, very interesting. If we could do that in a more international level, it would be great, particularly if we can use the internet now that we are sort of trained in doing things by the internet, because of course the costs of traveling would be difficult for the students. And also, one thing that I'm dealing with it is that we, at least here in Brazil, for a long time, we always thought in planning as a state, from a state or a governmental or a public perspective. And now, of course, there is private planning, of course, but we know very little about that. But there's a growing set of activities that we could talk about, commons planning or something like that, that are not necessarily performed by planners, but they have a very interesting impact in thinking and in organizing ways of housing and urban settlements in general. I think that would be an interesting area also of widening the perspective of planning. Perhaps a session in the next World Planning Conference, or the articulation between research, education research, and what we call in Brazil extension. I don't know if you use this expression in other countries, but this idea of being more close to people outside the university and bringing them to help us learn what we do and reflect on what we do. It's a very interesting thing to do also. Well, those are some immediate things that crossed my mind, and I thank you very much for the opportunity again. And very nice to see you all since many years.
Thank you very much, Eloisa. Professor Wu, please, your final thoughts. Your microphone.
Very delighted to see you again. We can say older friends. And I would like to say for the coming decades, actually, I use 4 more. The first more is we should more innovation for the planning education, also for planning self. The knowledge is a lot of really we need for the innovation idea for our planning, actually, for the urban planning, for regional planning. The world is changing so fast. We need also new knowledge. We needed innovation, more promotion innovation. That's the first points. Second points, I would like to say more student participation. The past is the student to follow the professors, go to the globalization. Today is maybe let the student go first, participate. And we, as professor, wish only as the advisor, as the support for their exchange. That is the more important. The second more is the more student participation. The third more, I would like to say, the more knowledge from the praxis is very important. Actually, so important, I think, the student and with the professor together through the praxis know the real knowledge from the local, the initiate, and that's the value to exchange, very important from praxis. And the fourth more, I would like to say, more the daily exchange. The 5 years bigger Congress is great, but it's too long. It's too long time to wait. And we need actually the daily communication, daily exchange, the knowledge, also the curriculum and the praxis and the lecture. Today we have the much more better the facility for the not like 20 years only the email. We have so good the video conference. I would like to also invite Louisa, also the Sergio, and also Eduardo to let your student also your activity. We also can announce, let the Chinese student participate your activity. And I would like also invite your student to participate the activity and the student seminar and through the video and more frequency. This is the, I would like to say, for more for the future. Thank you again. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Vo. Yes, I think we could do that. Actually, we are very much pressed to internationalize here, and I think most of the countries are. So I think we should really try to enlarge the relationship between in our courses and have our students more close to each other. I'm sure that we will try, and I will bring these ideas certainly for the steering committee. I know there was going to be a workshop, like a sort of competition in between the students that the Indonesians are planning. And so I think this would be a good experience of trying to join the students together, for them to think from their different backgrounds, to think about a specific urban issue related to the Congress that probably the Indonesians are planning, and also with the support of APSA, that's the Asian, because it's going to be a World Planning School Congress, but also it's going to be an Asian Planning Schools Congress. So I would like to thank you very much. I think it was really rich, our roundtable here. It's really a shame that Alan and Klaus couldn't be with us, but somehow they shared their thoughts with us. Alan with his very sympathetic email, and Klaus with his presentation. And I will try to summarize these for this Congress, the dialogues that are finishing now, but also for the future events of GPEAN. So thank you very much for your presence, and also thank for the attendees that are watching us from all over the world. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.